The space around Centauri Prime burned with the light of dying ships. Captain Elena Vasquez watched from the bridge of the UES Indomitable as another human vessel simply stopped existing. One moment the destroyer Yorktown was firing everything it had at the enemy fleet. The next moment it was nothing but glowing dust scattered across the void. "My God," whispered Lieutenant Commander Torres from the weapons station. "They're not even trying." Elena gripped the arms of her command chair. Harder. The alien ships moved through space like sharks through water. Their hulls were dark and organic-looking, as if someone had grown them instead of building them. When human weapons hit them, the impacts seemed to heal almost instantly. Worse than that, the alien ships seemed to learn from each attack. "Captain, we're receiving a priority transmission from Admiral Chen," reported Communications Officer Park. "Put her through." The hologram of Admiral Sarah Chen appeared on the bridge. The woman's face was grim, her uniform crisp despite the chaos around them. Behind her, Elena could see the bridge of the flagship Constitution, humanity's pride and the largest ship in their fleet. "Elena, pull your battle group back immediately. We're evacuating the system." "Admiral, there are still civilian transports trying to escape the planet. If we leave now, if we stay, we'll all die just like the others." Chen's voice carried the weight of terrible knowledge. "The Caltharians aren't just winning, Elena. They're adapting to everything we throw at them. Every weapon, every tactic, every strategy. They learn it, counter it, and become stronger." Through the viewports, Elena could see the last of the Centauri Defense Force making their final stand. The alien fleet had arrived 3 hours ago. In that time, they had destroyed over 200 ships without losing a single vessel of their own. "How many ships have we lost today?" Elena asked, though she dreaded the answer. "All of them," Chen replied. "The Centauri Defense Force is gone. The Mars Colonial Fleet was destroyed yesterday. The Europa Battle Group lasted less than an hour. This morning, in 6 months, Elena, they've broken 12 entire star systems. 12. And we still don't understand how they do it." Elena watched as one of the alien ships approached a crippled human cruiser. Instead of destroying it with weapons, the alien vessel seemed to reach out with tentacle-like extensions. Where the tentacles touched the human ship, the metal began to dissolve. Not explode, not burn, but simply cease to exist as if it had never been there at all. "Jesus Christ," Torres muttered, "they're eating our ships." "Captain Vasquez," Admiral Chen continued, "report to the Emergency Council meeting on Luna Station. Every surviving fleet commander will be there. We need to figure out what the hell we're going to do." The transmission ended, leaving Elena staring at the battle raging outside. The last human ship in the system, a small patrol vessel, was trying to escape. The alien ships let it go, as they always did. They always let one ship escape to carry word of their victory. "Helm, set course for Luna Station maximum warp," Elena ordered. "Aye, Captain," replied the helmsman, jumping to warp in 30 seconds. As the Indomitable prepared to leave, Elena took one last look at Centauri Prime. The planet that had been home to 3 million humans was now dark, its orbital defenses gone, its cities probably already under alien control. In the distance, the Caltharian fleet moved with terrifying purpose toward their next target. The jump to warp felt different this time. Usually, Elena found the sensation comforting, like being wrapped in a warm blanket. Today it felt like running away. Luna Station buzzed with desperate activity when they arrived. Ships from dozens of different species crowded the docking bays. Elena recognized vessels from the Altarian Republic, the Vegan Trade Union, even a few ships from the usually isolationist Tau Ceti Collective. Everyone was here because everyone was losing. The main conference room was packed. Elena found a seat near the back and listened as representative after representative told the same story. The Caltharians arrived, demanded surrender, and when refused, they destroyed everything. No negotiation, no mercy, no survivors except for the single ship they always allowed to escape. "The pattern is always the same," explained Ambassador Veltar of the Altarian Republic. His blue skin was pale with stress, and his normally perfect posture had sagged with defeat. "They give us 72 hours to surrender unconditionally. If we refuse, they attack. If we fight back, they adapt to our weapons faster than we can modify them. How is that possible? Asked Captain Morrison of the heavy cruiser Enterprise. No technology can adapt that quickly. Their ships aren't just technology, replied Dr. Yuki Tanaka, humanity's chief xenobiologist. Our analysis of the debris we've managed to collect shows a combination of organic and mechanical components. The Caltharian vessels are partially alive. They can literally evolve their defenses in real time. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Elena had seen energy weapons become completely useless after just a few shots. She had watched railgun projectiles get absorbed and somehow used to strengthen alien hull plating. Even nuclear weapons seemed to make the alien ships stronger rather than destroying them. We estimate their fleet at over 300 vessels, continued Dr. Tanaka. Each one is roughly the size of our largest dreadnoughts, but far more advanced. They've been moving through this sector of the galaxy for at least a year, systematically conquering everything in their path. What do they want? Asked someone from the back of the room. Resources, replied Ambassador Zthcar. Planets, raw materials, and... He paused uncomfortably. Biological specimens for study. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. The aliens weren't just conquerors, they were collectors. The good news, Dr. Tanaka continued, is that they seem willing to accept surrenders. Species that submit immediately are allowed to continue existing, though under Caltharian rule. They're moved to reservation worlds and used as a labor force. That's the good news? Morrison asked incredulously. The alternative is complete annihilation, Zthcar replied. We've seen what happens to species that continue to resist. The Caltharians don't just defeat them, they erase them. Planets stripped of all life, entire cultures eliminated from existence. The debate that followed was painful to watch. One by one, the various species began discussing the terms of their surrender. The mathematics were simple and brutal. The Caltharians had never lost a battle. They had never even lost a single ship. Resistance seemed futile. The Vegan Trade Union will begin surrender negotiations tomorrow, announced Ambassador Krell, his reptilian features twisted with shame. We cannot ask our people to die for nothing. The Tau Ceti Collective agrees, added their representative, a tall, thin being with large eyes. We will submit to Caltharian rule rather than face extinction. One by one, humanity's allies announced their intention to surrender. Elena understood their choice. When facing an enemy that had never been defeated, survival meant submission. Admiral Chen stood slowly, her uniform crisp despite the hours of debate. The room fell silent as all eyes turned to her. Elena knew what was coming, and she felt a mixture of pride and terror. Earth will not surrender, Chen announced in a clear, strong voice. The reaction was immediate. Several ambassadors began speaking at once, their voices filled with dismay and disbelief. Admiral Chen, Ambassador Zthcar said desperately, please, reconsider. Humanity is new to galactic politics. Your technology is generations behind the rest of us. If we cannot stand against the Caltharians, how can you possibly hope to succeed? We probably can't, Chen admitted, but we're going to try anyway. This is madness, Krell hissed. You're condemning your entire species to extinction. Maybe, Chen replied calmly. But some things are worse than dying. We've fought for our independence before, against enemies that seemed impossible to defeat. We've never been very good at giving up. Elena felt a surge of pride mixed with despair. Humanity had always been stubborn, sometimes stupidly so. They had a long history of fighting battles they couldn't win, simply because they refused to accept defeat. What forces do you have left? Asked Morrison quietly. Chen's expression grew grim. 37 ships, that's everything. Our entire remaining fleet. The number hung in the air like a death sentence. 37 ships against a force that had destroyed thousands. Elena did the math in her head. The Caltharians outnumbered them almost 10 to 1. Admiral, Ambassador Zthcar said gently, perhaps it would be better to live under Caltharian rule than to die for nothing. We won't be dying for nothing, Chen replied. We'll be dying for the idea that some things are worth fighting for, even when you can't win. As the meeting broke up, Elena approached the Admiral. Chen looked tired but determined, like a woman who had made peace with an impossible decision. "Orders, Admiral?" Elena asked. "Take the Indomitable back to Earth," Chen replied. "We have maybe a week before they finish conquering the surrender worlds and turn their attention to us. Use that time to prepare." "Prepare for what? We can't win this fight." Chen smiled sadly. "No, we probably can't. But we're going to make them remember us. Every species in this galaxy is going to know that when the Caltharians came for humanity, we stood up and fought back. Even if it kills us all?" "Especially then," Chen replied. "Because sometimes, Elena, the most important battles are the ones you lose. They define who you are more than the ones you win." As Elena walked back to her ship, she thought about Earth, about the billions of people who were going about their lives, unaware that their government had just chosen death over slavery. She thought about her sister Maria, teaching school in New Chicago, about her nephew Tommy, who wanted to be a starship captain when he grew up. The Indomitable pulled away from Luna Station and jumped to warp, carrying Elena toward Earth and toward humanity's last stand. Behind them, the representatives of a dozen species began drafting surrender documents, preparing to trade their freedom for their lives. Elena understood their choice. It was logical, rational, and completely sensible. It was also completely human to reject it. Earth looked beautiful from orbit, blue and white and green against the black of space. Elena stood on the observation deck of the Indomitable, watching her homeworld turn slowly beneath them. In a few days, this peaceful scene might be nothing but burning debris. "Captain Admiral Chen is requesting all senior staff in Conference Room Alpha," announced Lieutenant Park over the comm system. Elena made her way to the conference room, where the surviving fleet commanders had gathered. 37 ships represented the entirety of humanity's remaining military force. Most of the captains looked grim and determined. A few looked terrified. All of them knew they were probably attending their last strategy meeting. Admiral Chen stood at the head of the table, looking every bit the military commander despite the impossible situation. Behind her, a holographic display showed the Caltharian fleet moving steadily through space toward Earth. Their estimated arrival time was marked in red: 71 hours. "Gentlemen, ladies," Chen began, "our situation is clear. The Caltharians will be here in 3 days. They'll demand our surrender, and when we refuse, they'll attack. Our job is to make that attack as costly as possible." "Admiral," Captain Morrison spoke up, "with respect, we've all seen what happens when fleets fight the Caltharians. They adapt to everything we throw at them. Energy weapons become useless after a few shots. Kinetic weapons get absorbed. Even nukes seem to make them stronger." "That's true," Chen acknowledged, "which is why we're not going to fight them the way everyone else has." She activated the holographic display, and the image changed to show detailed scans of Caltharian ship designs. The vessels looked more like living creatures than machines, with curved hulls that seemed to pulse with internal light. "Dr. Tanaka, please brief us on what we've learned." Dr. Tanaka stepped forward, her tablet in hand. "The Caltharian ships are biomechanical hybrids, part machine, part living organism. This allows them to adapt their defenses in real time, but it also gives us some insights into their weaknesses." Elena leaned forward, suddenly interested. "What kind of weaknesses?" "Biological systems, no matter how advanced, follow certain rules," Tanaka explained. "They adapt to threats they can understand and categorize. The problem is that every species in the galaxy has followed similar paths of technological development. Everyone uses energy weapons, guided missiles, and smart projectiles. The Caltharian organisms have learned to counter these patterns." "But humans are different?" asked Captain Rodriguez of the destroyer Defiant. "Humans are weird," Tanaka said with a slight smile. "While other species perfected energy weapons millennia ago, humans kept using kinetic weapons. Gunpowder, chemical explosives, solid projectiles. Most advanced civilizations consider these primitive and inefficient. Elena began to see where this was heading. You're saying their adaptation protocols might not be designed to handle primitive weapons? Exactly, Tanaka replied. When was the last time the Caltharians faced an enemy that fired chunks of metal using chemical propellants, or used simple explosive charges? Their biological systems might not know how to adapt to weapons they've never encountered. Admiral Chen activated another display. Which brings us to our new strategy. We're going to retrofit every ship in the fleet with the most primitive weapons we can manufacture. The display showed schematics for modified human ships. Elena stared at the designs in amazement. The elegant lines of modern starships had been cluttered with additional weapon mounts, missile pods, and what looked like old-fashioned artillery, cannons. Admiral, Morrison said slowly, some of these weapons are centuries old. We stopped using chemical propellants on starships 500 years ago. Which is exactly why they might work, Chen replied. The Caltharians have adapted to counter every advanced weapon system in the galaxy, but they've never faced a fleet armed with gunpowder and raw stupidity. Elena studied the schematics more carefully. These railguns aren't standard military issue. They're mining equipment, confirmed Commander Sarah Walsh, the fleet's chief engineer. Magnetic accelerators used to launch raw ore to processing stations. We've modified them to fire solid tungsten rods instead. What about the chemical weapons? Asked Captain Singh of the cruiser Mumbai. Every type of explosive humanity has ever invented, Walsh replied with enthusiasm. Thermite, white phosphorus-shaped charges, cluster munitions. If it blows up and makes a mess, we're mounting it on these ships. Elena looked at the weapons list and felt a mixture of excitement and horror. Humanity was preparing to fight an advanced alien fleet with what amounted to very large guns and very big bombs. The theory is sound, Dr. Tanaka continued, but we won't know for certain until we test it. The Caltharian adaptation process seems to require them to experience a weapon before they can counter it. If we hit them with enough different types of primitive weapons, we might overwhelm their ability to adapt. How long do we have to complete these modifications? Elena asked. 68 hours, Chen replied. Every shipyard in the solar system is working around the clock. We're stripping mining equipment, construction tools, even demolition charges from civilian operations. The meeting continued for another hour as they discussed tactics, logistics, and the grim reality of their situation. When it ended, Elena found herself walking alongside Dr. Tanaka toward the hangar bay. Doctor, can I ask you something? Elena said. Of course. Do you really think this will work? Tanaka was quiet for a moment. Honestly, probably not. The Caltharians have destroyed civilizations far more advanced than ours, but there's a chance, a small chance, that their biological adaptation systems aren't prepared for truly primitive weapons. And if you're wrong, then we die, Tanaka replied simply. But we die fighting with everything we have, using every advantage our weird human development has given us. Elena returned to the Indomitable to oversee the modifications to her ship. The next 2 days were a blur of activity. Work crews swarmed over every vessel in the fleet, welding new weapon mounts and installing targeting systems for weapons that hadn't been used in space combat for centuries. The Indomitable received special attention as the fleet's flagship. Elena watched as teams of engineers mounted massive railguns along the ship's hull. These weren't elegant military weapons, but industrial machinery repurposed for war. They looked crude and functional, like something built in a garage rather than a high-tech weapons facility. Captain, Torres reported from the weapons station, we now have 48 railguns, 16 chemical torpedo launchers, and enough explosive projectiles to level a small moon. How's the targeting system? That's the beauty of it, Torres replied with a grin. These weapons are so simple they barely need targeting systems, point and shoot. The railguns fire solid tungsten rods at a significant fraction of light speed. The torpedoes are packed with different types of chemical explosives. No guidance systems, no smart targeting, just old-fashioned ballistics. Elena nodded approvingly. After centuries of increasingly complex weapons, humanity was returning to its roots, hitting things with rocks, albeit very fast, very heavy rocks. What about the other ships in the fleet? The destroyers have been fitted with cluster munition launchers, Torres reported. The cruisers are carrying mining charges modified as weapons. Even the support vessels have been given some kind of primitive armament. Elena spent the remaining hours before the Caltharian arrival studying tactical reports and saying goodbye. She called her sister Maria, though she couldn't tell her exactly why. She wrote letters to friends and family, messages that would be delivered if she didn't survive the coming battle. 48 hours after the fleet modifications began, the Caltharian fleet appeared at the edge of the solar system. Elena stood, on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching as 300 alien ships moved into formation beyond Neptune's orbit. "They're even bigger than the report suggested," whispered Lieutenant Park. Elena had to agree. The Caltharian vessels were massive, each one dwarfing humanity's largest ships. They moved through space with organic grace, their biomechanical, hulls pulsing with alien light. Even from this distance, they looked terrifyingly alive. "Communications incoming," Park announced. "It's on all frequencies, broadcasting to the entire solar system." "Put it on screen." The view screen flickered, and an alien face appeared. The creature was beautiful in a terrible way, its features a mixture of organic curves and metallic implants. When it spoke, its voice carried the sound of absolute authority. "I am Admiral Zthcar of the Caltharian hegemony. The species you call humanity is hereby ordered to surrender unconditionally. You have 72 hours to comply. Failure to surrender will result in the complete destruction of your civilization. This is your only warning." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in silence. Elena looked around at her crew, seeing determination mixed with fear in their faces. These were good people, brave people, and they deserved better than to die in a hopeless battle against impossible odds. But they were human, which meant they were too stubborn to give up without a fight. "Send a message back," Elena ordered. "Ship to ship, direct to their flagship." "Channel open, Captain." Elena stood straighter, knowing that her words would be heard not just by the aliens but by every human in the solar system. This might be humanity's last moment of defiance, and she wanted to make it count. "Admiral Zthcar, this is Captain Elena Vasquez of the United Earthship Indomitable, representing the Human Defense Fleet. We have received your surrender demand and wish to respond with a message of our own." Elena paused, thinking of her sister, her nephew, and the 3 billion people on the planet below. She thought of every human who had ever refused to give up when facing impossible odds. Go to hell. The transmission ended, and Elena turned to her crew. "Well, people, we've got 72 hours to prepare for the fight of our lives. Let's make sure those bastards remember us." The bridge erupted in cheers, and Elena allowed herself a small smile. They were going to die, probably horribly, but they were going to die as free humans, and sometimes that was worth everything. The Caltharian fleet moved like a dark wave across the solar system. Elena watched from the bridge of the Indomitable as 300 alien ships approached Earth with terrifying precision. They had waited exactly 72 hours before beginning their advance, just as they had with every other world they had conquered. "Fleet status report," Elena ordered. "All 37 ships are in position," replied Commander Torres. "We're formed up between the Caltharian fleet and Earth, just like the Admiral ordered." Elena nodded. The human fleet looked tiny compared to the approaching armada, like a handful of fishing boats trying to stop a tsunami. But they were here, and they were ready to fight with everything they had. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from Admiral Chen on the Constitution," announced Lieutenant Park. "Put her through." Admiral Chen's image appeared on the main screen. The older woman looked calm and determined, as if she were preparing for a routine military exercise rather than humanity's last battle. "All ships, this is Admiral Chen. Today we make history. Not because we're going to win, but because we're going to show the galaxy that some things are worth dying for. Remember, our weapons are primitive by galactic standards, but that might be exactly what we need. Hit them hard, hit them fast, and make every shot count." Elena looked around at her crew. These were good people, professionals who had volunteered to stand between Earth and annihilation. They deserve to know the truth about their chances. "Listen up, people," she announced to the bridge crew. "We're about to face an enemy that has never lost a battle. They've destroyed fleets 10 times our size without taking a single casualty. The math says we can't win this fight." The crew listened in silence, their faces showing a mixture of fear and determination. "But we're not here because of math," Elena continued. "We're here because sometimes you have to stand up and fight even when you can't win. We're here because freedom is worth dying for. And we're here because we're too damn stubborn to give up." The bridge crew erupted in cheers, and Elena felt a surge of pride. These people understood what they were fighting for. "Incoming transmission from the Caltharian flagship," Park announced. "Put it on screen." Admiral Zthcar's alien face appeared. Again, his expression unreadable. When he spoke, his voice carried a note of what might have been amusement. "Captain Vasquez, your 72 hours have expired. I confess myself impressed by your species' stubborn refusal to accept the inevitable. However, your defiance ends here. Surrender now and your people will be allowed to live as servants of the hegemony." Elena stood up slowly, meeting the alien's gaze. "We gave you our answer before, Admiral. It hasn't changed." "Then you have chosen extinction," Zthcar replied. "So be it. You will have the honor of being destroyed by the hegemony's finest ships. Take comfort in knowing that your sacrifice will serve as a warning to other species who might consider similar foolishness." The transmission ended, and Elena turned to her crew. "All hands, battle stations. This is it, people. Time to show these aliens what humans are made of." Warning lights flashed throughout the ship as the crew prepared for combat. Elena felt the familiar knot in her stomach that came before every battle, but this time it was mixed with something else. Not hope exactly, but a grim satisfaction in knowing they were going to go out fighting. "The Caltharian fleet is beginning their attack run," reported the sensor operator. "They're maintaining their standard formation." Elena studied the tactical display. The alien ships moved with organic precision, their biomechanical hulls pulsing with internal energy. They had faced this pattern hundreds of times before and knew exactly how it would end. "Fleet weapons are charged and ready," Torres announced. "All ships reporting full readiness." "Good," Elena replied. "Remember, we hit them with everything at once. Don't give their adaptation systems time to analyze our weapons." The first exchange began exactly as Elena had expected. The Caltharian ships opened fire with their standard energy weapons, beams of coherent light that could slice through conventional armor like paper. The human ships responded with their own energy weapons, putting up a fight that looked impressive but would ultimately prove futile. The destroyer Yorktown was the first to die, its hull breached by alien weapons that seemed to grow stronger with each shot. Then the cruiser Beijing exploded in a ball of superheated plasma. One by one, the human ships began falling to the superior alien technology. Elena watched with grim satisfaction as the battle unfolded exactly as the Caltharians expected. The aliens had seen this pattern hundreds of times. First, the primitive species would fire their energy weapons. Then, as those weapons became ineffective, they would switch to kinetic projectiles. Finally, in desperation, they would try nuclear weapons before being completely destroyed. It was a dance the Caltharians knew by heart. "Captain, we're down to 28 ships," Torres reported. "The aliens haven't lost a single vessel." "Perfect," Elena replied. "Right on schedule." Torres looked at her in confusion. "Captain?" "Now, Commander. Hit them with the real weapons." Elena keyed the fleet command frequency. "All ships, this is the Indomitable. Execute order primitive. Repeat, execute order primitive." Across the human fleet weapon systems that had been hidden beneath false hulls suddenly came online. The elegant lines of modern starships were broken by the crude bulk of mining equipment repurposed for war. The Indomitable was the first to fire. 48 railguns discharged simultaneously, sending tungsten rods flying at incredible velocity toward the Caltharian fleet. These weren't guided missiles or energy beams. They were simply chunks of very hard metal moving very, very fast. The results were immediate and shocking. The lead Caltharian ship, a massive biomechanical dreadnought that had never taken damage in battle, suddenly had 6 perfectly round holes punched through its hull. Internal explosions began tearing the ship apart from within. "Direct hits!" Torres shouted in amazement. "Their shields didn't even slow the projectiles down." Elena grinned fiercely. "That's because their shields are designed to stop energy weapons and smart projectiles. They don't know what to do with simple kinetic force." Across the fleet, human ships began unleashing weapons that hadn't been seen in space combat for centuries. The destroyer Defiant fired a barrage of chemical explosive, torpedoes, each one packed with a different type of bomb. The cruiser Mumbai launched mining charges that detonated in brilliant flashes of thermite and white phosphorus. The Caltharian formation, which had maintained perfect discipline through hundreds of battles, suddenly broke apart in confusion. Ships that had never taken damage were exploding, burning, and spinning out of control. 3 enemy ships destroyed. The sensor operator reported in disbelief. "Make that 5, 7. My God, we're actually hurting them." Elena watched as the alien fleet tried to adapt to the new threat. She could see their biomechanical hulls beginning to change, growing thicker armor plating and developing new defensive systems. But human weapons development had never been elegant or predictable. "Fire everything we have," Elena ordered. "Don't give them time to adapt." The Indomitable unleashed its full arsenal. Railguns fired solid projectiles in rapid succession. Chemical torpedoes exploded in sequence, each one bringing a different type of destruction. Even the ship's point defense systems had been modified, firing streams of ball bearings like ancient machine guns. The Caltharian flagship, Admiral Zthcar's personal vessel, took a direct hit from a modified mining charge. The explosion tore away a section of the ship's organic hull, exposing the biomechanical systems beneath. For the first time in the war, a Caltharian admiral's ship was bleeding. "Incoming transmission from the enemy flagship," Park announced. "Put it on screen." Zthcar's image appeared, but now the alien looked different. His perfect features were twisted with something Elena had never seen in a Caltharian before: uncertainty. "What? Are these weapons?" he demanded. "This is not how warfare is conducted. These are primitive tools barely more advanced than throwing rocks." "That's exactly what they are," Elena replied with satisfaction. "Rocks thrown very, very hard." "Impossible," Zthcar said. "No advanced species uses such crude weapons." "We're not an advanced species," Elena shot back. "We're humans. We're stubborn, primitive, and too stupid to know when we're beaten." The alien admiral's image flickered off, and Elena turned back to the battle. The human fleet was down to 20 ships, but the Caltharian fleet had lost almost 40 vessels. It was the first time in their conquest that they had taken significant casualties. "Captain, the enemy ships are beginning to adapt," Torres warned. "Their hull plating is getting thicker." Elena nodded. She had expected this. The Caltharian biomechanical systems were incredibly advanced, capable of evolution in real time. But human weapons had one advantage that no other species possessed: complete unpredictability. "Switch to the cluster munitions," Elena ordered, "and prep the special package." "The special package, Captain?" Elena smiled grimly. "The one thing no advanced civilization would ever think to use in space combat." The human fleet changed tactics again, this time firing clouds of small projectiles instead of single large ones. The Caltharian ships, which had begun adapting to solid tungsten rods, found themselves facing thousands of ball bearings moving at relativistic speeds. The destroyer Phoenix had been fitted with what the engineers called the garbage disposal. It fired literally everything the ship could spare: scrap metal, broken equipment, even the contents of the ship's waste recyclers. The debris cloud struck a Caltharian cruiser like a shotgun blast, shredding its adaptive hull plating. 15. Enemy ships destroyed, the sensor operator reported. "But we're down to 12 ships ourselves." Elena looked at the tactical display. The math was still against them. Even with their primitive weapons, they were outnumbered more than 20 to 1. But for the first time in the war, the Caltharians looked uncertain. "All ships, this is Admiral Chen," came the transmission from the Constitution. We've proved our point. We've shown them they can be hurt. But now comes the hard part. We need to do enough damage that the survivors remember this battle. Elena understood. They weren't going to win, but they might be able to inflict enough casualties to make the Caltharians think twice about their next conquest. Captain, Torres said quietly, the Constitution is charging directly at the enemy flagship. Elena watched as humanity's largest ship, battered and burning but still fighting, accelerated toward the heart of the Caltharian formation. Admiral Chen was making the ultimate sacrifice, using her ship as a weapon. Follow her in, Elena ordered. All remaining ships, ramming speed. Let's finish this the way humans always finish fights. The last 12 ships of humanity's fleet charged into the teeth of the enemy formation, their primitive weapons firing continuously. They were going to die, but they were going to make it cost the aliens everything they had. And in the depths of space, for the first time in their long conquest, the Caltharian hegemony learned what it meant to face an enemy that simply refused to quit. The space around Earth burned with the fury of desperate combat. Elena gripped her command chair as the Indomitable shuddered under enemy fire, her hull breached in 17 places, but still fighting. Around her, the last remnants of humanity's fleet continued their impossible battle against the Caltharian hegemony. Hull breach on Deck 7, Torres reported, his voice steady despite the chaos. We've lost railguns 12 through 15. Seal it and reroute power to the remaining weapons, Elena ordered. How many enemy ships are left? 237, the sensor operator replied. We've destroyed 63 of their vessels, but we're down to 8 ships. Elena allowed herself a moment of grim pride. 63 kills. No other species had managed to destroy even one Caltharian ship, and humanity had taken out nearly a fifth of their fleet. But the math was still brutal. 8 ships against over 200. Captain, the Constitution has reached the enemy flagship, Park announced. On the main screen, Elena watched as Admiral Chen's ship collided with the massive Caltharian vessel. The explosion was visible across the solar system, a brilliant flash that took out both ships and damaged several others nearby. Admiral Chen's final sacrifice had added 4 more enemy vessels to the kill count. All remaining ships, this is Captain Vasquez assuming fleet command, Elena broadcast. Admiral Chen has shown us the way. We're not going home today, people, but we're going to make them remember us. The 7 surviving human ships acknowledged her transmission and continued their desperate fight. The destroyer Defiant was firing its last chemical torpedoes, each explosion a different color as various compounds burned in space. The cruiser Mumbai had lost half its weapons, but kept firing with what remained, sending streams of ball bearings into the enemy formation. Elena studied the tactical display and realized something important. The Caltharian ships were adapting, but they were adapting to each human weapon separately. Their biomechanical systems could counter energy beams or kinetic projectiles, but they struggled when faced with both simultaneously. Torres, I need you to fire every different type of weapon we have at the same target. Not in sequence, but all at once. Captain, that will drain our power reserves to critical levels. We won't live long enough for that to matter, Elena replied. Pick the biggest target you can find and hit it with everything. Torres targeted a massive Caltharian dreadnought that was moving to intercept the human formation. The Indomitable unleashed its remaining arsenal in one coordinated strike. Rail, guns fired tungsten rods, chemical torpedoes launched with thermite, white phosphorus, and high explosives. Point defense systems sprayed clouds of ball bearings. Even the ship's emergency flares were fired as improvised weapons. The Caltharian ship's adaptive systems tried to counter the incoming fire, but they were overwhelmed by the variety of threats. Some weapons were stopped, others were deflected, but enough got through to cause massive damage. The alien vessel broke apart in a cascade of secondary explosions. Direct kill, Torres reported with satisfaction. That's the biggest ship we've taken down yet. Elena nodded, but her attention was focused on something else she had noticed. The Caltharian formation was changing, becoming more cautious. For the first time in their conquest, they were showing signs of uncertainty. Captain, incoming transmission from the enemy fleet, Park announced. It's Admiral Zthcar. Put him through. The alien commander appeared on screen, and Elena was surprised by what she saw. Zthcar's perfect biomechanical features showed signs of damage. Part of his face had been replaced by crude metal plating, and one of his eyes flickered with electronic static. He had been wounded, probably when his flagship took damage from human weapons. "Captain Vasquez," Zthcar began, his voice carrying a note Elena had never heard from a Caltharian before. "Respect. Your species fights with remarkable tenacity. However, this battle is over. You have 7 ships remaining against more than 200 of mine. Surrender now, and I will ensure your crew is treated with the honor due to worthy opponents." Elena almost laughed. "Admiral, you've been conquering the galaxy for months without losing a single ship. Today you've lost over 60 vessels to a primitive human fleet. How does that feel?" Zthcar's expression darkened. "Your weapons are crude and unpredictable. They are not how civilized species conduct warfare." "Exactly," Elena replied. "We're not civilized. We're humans. We've been killing each other with sticks and stones for thousands of years, and we've gotten very, very good at it." The transmission ended, and Elena turned back to the battle. The Caltharian fleet was regrouping, preparing for a final assault that would destroy the remaining human ships. But something had changed in their formation. They were being more careful, more cautious. For the first time, they were fighting an enemy they couldn't predict. "Captain, the cruiser Mumbai is requesting permission to attempt a ramming attack," Torres reported. Elena shook her head. "Negative. Tell them to keep fighting with their weapons. I have a better idea." She activated the fleet command frequency. "All ships, this is the Indomitable. We're going to try something that no sane military commander would ever attempt. We're going to split up and attack from multiple directions simultaneously." "Captain," came the voice of Commander Rodriguez from the destroyer Phoenix. "That's suicide. They'll pick us off one by one." "Maybe," Elena admitted. "But their adaptation systems seem designed to counter unified threats. If we hit them from 7 different angles with 7 different weapon types, we might overwhelm their ability to adapt." It was a desperate plan, but desperate was all they had left. The 7 surviving human ships broke formation and scattered across the battle space. Each vessel carried different weapons, different tactics, different approaches to the art of making things explode. The Defiant attacked from above, firing its remaining chemical explosives in a pattern designed to create maximum chaos. The Mumbai came in low, using its point defense systems to create a cloud of high-velocity debris. The Phoenix approached, from the side, launching what the crew called the kitchen sink protocol, literally everything on the ship that could be fired from a weapon system. Elena took the Indomitable straight up the middle, directly toward the heart of the Caltharian formation. It was the most dangerous approach, but it also offered the best target selection. "All weapons, continuous fire," Elena ordered. "Don't stop shooting until we're dead or they are." The battle that followed was unlike anything in recorded military history. 7 human ships, battered and outnumbered, fought with weapons that belonged in a museum. They faced an enemy fleet equipped with technology that could adapt to any threat, and they did it by being too chaotic to adapt to. The Caltharian ships tried to respond, but their perfect coordination was disrupted by attacks coming from every direction. Their biomechanical systems attempted to evolve defenses, but each human ship was using completely different weapons. By the time they adapted to thermite explosions, they were being hit with ball bearings. When they developed armor, against kinetic weapons, chemical fires ate through their hulls. 68 enemy kills, the sensor operator announced. 70, 75. Elena watched as another Caltharian vessel broke apart under fire from the Phoenix. The alien ship's adaptive hull had been overwhelmed by the sheer variety of crude, primitive, utterly human weapons hitting it simultaneously. But the cost was mounting. The destroyer Defiant exploded in a ball of plasma, taking 3 enemy ships with it. The cruiser Mumbai lasted another 10 minutes before enemy fire finally overwhelmed its damaged systems. "We're down to 4 ships," Torres reported. Elena nodded, grimly. The Indomitable, the Phoenix, the light cruiser Tokyo, and the corvette Spartan, 4 ships against almost 200. But they had proven something important. The Caltharians could be beaten. Captain, the Phoenix is reporting critical damage to their main engines, Park announced. Tell Commander Rodriguez to keep fighting, as long as he can, Elena replied. We're all going to die here, but we're going to make it count. As if to prove her point, the Phoenix launched its final salvo, a spread of mining charges that had been packed with every type of explosive compound the engineers could find. The charges detonated in sequence among a group of Caltharian cruisers, creating a chain reaction that destroyed 6 enemy vessels. The Phoenix died 30 seconds later, but Commander Rodriguez had the satisfaction of knowing his ship had taken 8 Caltharian vessels with it. 3 ships left, Elena announced to the bridge crew. We've killed 81 of their ships. Not bad for a bunch of primitive humans. The crew managed weak cheers, but Elena could see the exhaustion and fear in their faces. They had been fighting for hours, their ship was falling apart around them, and they were facing impossible odds. But they were still fighting. Captain, incoming message from Earth, Park reported. It's from Fleet Command. Put it through. The image that appeared on screen was not a military officer, but Elena's sister Maria. She was standing in what looked like a broadcast studio, her face streaked with tears but her voice steady. Elena, this is being broadcast on all frequencies throughout the solar system. The whole planet is watching what you're doing up there. The children in my school are cheering every time you destroy another enemy ship. The entire world is proud of you and your crews. Maria paused, struggling with emotion. You've shown them that humans don't give up. You've proven that freedom is worth fighting for, even against impossible odds. Whatever happens next, you've already won the battle that matters most. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in silence. Elena felt tears running down her cheeks, but she wiped them away and turned back to the tactical display. You heard her, people. The whole world is watching. Let's give them something to remember. The Indomitable charged toward the remaining Caltharian ships, its primitive weapons firing continuously. Behind her, the Tokyo and the Spartan followed, their crews determined to sell their lives as dearly as possible. They were going to die, but they were going to die as free humans, and, sometimes Elena thought, that was the most important victory of all. The Indomitable shuddered as another enemy beam carved through her starboard hull. Elena felt the deck plates buckle beneath her feet, but her ship kept fighting. Around her, the bridge crew worked with grim determination, their faces lit by the glow of warning lights and the fire of distant explosions. Hull breach on decks 4 through 7, Torres reported. We've lost life support to half the ship. Seal what you can and keep fighting, Elena ordered. How many enemy ships are left? 143, the sensor operator replied. We've killed 98 of them, but we're down to just the 3 ships. Elena looked at the tactical display and felt a mixture of pride and despair. The light cruiser Tokyo was barely holding together, her hull split open like a broken egg but still firing her weapons. The corvette Spartan had lost her main engines and was drifting, but her crew kept shooting with whatever systems remained online, and the Indomitable, humanity's flagship and last hope, was dying by inches, but she was taking a lot of aliens with her. Captain, the Tokyo is requesting permission for a final attack run, Park announced. Elena nodded. Tell Captain Nakamura he has permission to die with honor. The Tokyo turned toward the densest concentration of enemy ships and accelerated on her failing engines. Elena watched as the brave little cruiser fired everything she had left. Chemical torpedoes, railgun rounds, even her emergency supplies launched from cargo tubes. The ship exploded when she reached the enemy formation, but her sacrifice destroyed 4 more Caltharian vessels. 2 ships left, Elena announced to her crew. The Spartan and us. We've proven our point. We've shown the galaxy that humans don't surrender. Now let's finish this properly. She opened a channel to the corvette. Captain Myers, this is Vasquez. You ready for one last dance? Damn right, Elena, came the reply from the Spartan. My ship can't move, but we can still shoot. You go ahead and charge them. We'll cover you as long as we can. Elena smiled despite everything. Even facing extinction, humans refused to give up on each other. All hands, this is the captain. Elena announced over the ship's comm system. "We're about to make our final attack. We've fought with honor. We've shown the enemy what humans are made of, and we've killed nearly 100 of their ships. Whatever happens next, you can all be proud of what we've accomplished today." The bridge crew straightened in their seats, ready for whatever came next. These were good people, Elena thought. They deserved better than to die in a hopeless battle, against impossible odds. But they were human, which meant they were too stubborn to accept defeat. "Captain, incoming transmission from the Caltharian flagship," Park reported. Elena almost ignored it, but something made her change her mind. "Put it through." Admiral Zthcar appeared on screen, and Elena was shocked by what she saw. The alien commander's biomechanical features were heavily damaged, with crude metal patches covering wounds that would have been fatal to a purely organic being. More importantly, his perfect composure had cracked. For the first time, a Caltharian leader looked uncertain. "Captain Vasquez," Zthcar began, his voice lacking its former authority, "your resistance has been instructive. We have never faced weapons like yours before. That's because we're too primitive to know better," Elena replied. "We still think hitting things with rocks is a valid military strategy." "Indeed," Zthcar said, and Elena thought she detected something like respect in his tone. "Your species has cost us nearly 100 ships. No civilization has ever inflicted such casualties upon the hegemony." Elena felt a surge of fierce pride. "Good. Maybe the next species you try to conquer will remember what we did here today." "That is precisely what concerns me," Zthcar admitted. "Your chaotic approach to warfare has revealed weaknesses in our adaptation protocols. If word of your tactics spreads to other species, our future conquests may prove more difficult." Elena began to understand. The Caltharians weren't just concerned about the ships they had lost. They were worried about what humanity's resistance would mean for their entire empire. "You're scared," she realized. "You're actually scared of what we've done here." Zthkar's damaged features twisted in what might have been anger or frustration. "We do not experience fear as you understand it, but we have learned to recognize threats to the hegemony's expansion. Your species represents such a threat. Then you should have accepted our surrender when we offered it," Elena said with dark humor. "You never offered surrender," Zthcar replied. "Exactly." The alien commander was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried a note of finality. "Captain Vasquez, I am going to destroy your remaining ships and sterilize your planet, not because it is necessary for our conquest, but because your species must never be allowed to spread its chaotic approach to warfare to other civilizations." Elena nodded. "I understand. You're not just conquering us anymore. You're trying to erase us because we've shown the galaxy that you can be beaten." "Precisely. Well then," Elena said, settling back in her command chair, "you'd better do it right. Because if even one human survives, we'll spend the rest of eternity teaching other species how to kill Caltharians." The transmission ended, and Elena turned to her crew. "This is it, people. They're going to throw everything they have at us. Let's make sure they remember this moment for the rest of their lives." The Caltharian fleet began moving toward the Indomitable with obvious intent. 143 ships converging on a single human vessel. It should have been a simple execution, but Elena noticed they were being cautious. Her primitive weapons had taught them to fear unpredictability. "Captain, the Spartan is hailing us," Park announced. "Put it through." Captain Myers appeared on screen, his face bloody but determined. "Elena, my ship is finished, but I've got one last gift for our friends out there. We've rigged our reactor to overload and packed. Our cargo holds with every piece of explosive material we could find. When they get close enough, we're going to give them a surprise they won't forget." Elena felt her throat tighten with emotion. "Bill, it's been an honor serving with you." "Likewise," Myers replied. "Now go give them hell. Show those bastards what happens when they pick a fight with humans." The Spartan drifted toward the approaching enemy fleet, looking like a derelict ship abandoned by her crew. The Caltharians, confident in their overwhelming numbers, paid little attention to the small corvette. They had learned to focus on the larger threats. It was a mistake that cost them dearly. When the Spartan reached the heart of the enemy formation, Captain Myers triggered his final surprise. The ship's reactor overloaded in a cascade explosion that was amplified by tons of chemical explosives, mining charges, and improvised bombs. The blast was visible from Earth, a brief new star that took 17 Caltharian ships with it into oblivion. 126 enemy ships remaining, Torres reported quietly. And just us. Elena looked around her bridge one last time. These people had followed her into an impossible battle and fought with courage that would be remembered for generations. They deserved to know how she felt about them. Torres, Park, everyone, she began. It has been the greatest honor of my life to serve with you. You've shown the galaxy what humans are capable of when we're backed against the wall. Whatever happens, next we've already won the only victory that matters. What's that, Captain? Torres asked. We've proven that freedom is worth dying for, Elena replied. And we've shown them that humans will never give up, no matter how bad the odds get. She turned to the tactical display and began plotting her final attack. The Indomitable was dying. Her hull breached in dozens of places, her weapons reduced to a handful of functioning systems. But she still had one advantage the Caltharians hadn't adapted to: human stubbornness. Set course for their flagship, Elena ordered. Ramming speed. Captain, we'll never get close enough, Torres protested. They'll destroy us long before we reach them. Elena smiled grimly. That's what they think. But we've got something they don't expect. She activated the ship's final surprise, a modification that had been installed during the frantic retrofit. The Indomitable's cargo holds had been packed with everything explosive the engineers could find, from mining charges to chemical fertilizer. More importantly, the ship's main reactor had been rigged for a controlled overload that would turn the entire vessel into a massive bomb. This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the UES Indomitable, she broadcast on all frequencies, knowing her words would be heard throughout the solar system. We came here to defend Earth, and that's exactly what we're going to do. To every human listening to this transmission, remember that we stood here today. Remember that we fought back when everyone said it was hopeless. And remember that we proved something important. Sometimes the most primitive weapons are the most effective. The Indomitable charged toward the Caltharian fleet, her remaining weapons firing continuously. Energy beams lanced out from the enemy ships, but Elena's vessel was already dead. She was just taking a long time to fall down. All crew to escape pods, Elena ordered. That's not a request, that's a direct order. We're staying with you, Captain, Torres replied, speaking for the entire bridge crew. Like hell you are, Elena shot back. Someone needs to survive to tell this story. Someone needs to let the galaxy know that humans don't give up. She sealed the bridge and activated the emergency evacuation system. The last thing she saw was her crew being forced into escape pods, their faces filled with tears and pride. Then Elena Vasquez was alone on the bridge of humanity's last warship, charging toward an enemy fleet that had never known defeat. She thought about her sister Maria, about her nephew Tommy, who wanted to be a starship captain, about the billions of people on Earth who were counting on her. The Indomitable reached the heart of the Caltharian formation, just as her reactor went critical. Elena's last act was to trigger the chemical explosives packed throughout her ship, turning the vessel into a weapon unlike anything the aliens had ever faced. The explosion was visible from Mars. When the light faded, Admiral Zthcar's flagship was gone, along with 43 other Caltharian vessels. The survivors of humanity's fleet had cost the invaders 115 ships and their supreme commander. For the first time in their conquest of the galaxy, the Caltharian hegemony retreated. The surviving ships jumped to hyperspace, carrying word of a primitive species that fought with weapons so crude and unpredictable that even their adaptive technology couldn't counter them. On Earth, the escape pods from the Indomitable were recovered by rescue ships. The survivors would spend the rest of their lives telling the story of Captain Elena Vasquez and the ship that stood alone against impossible odds. And throughout the galaxy, word began to spread. The species that had surrendered to the Caltharians started to wonder, If humans could fight back with such primitive weapons, what could they accomplish with their advanced technology and human tactics combined? The Caltharian hegemony had won the battle, but they had lost something far more important. They had lost their reputation as unstoppable conquerors. And sometimes, Elena had been right to think that was the most important victory of all.